Okay, so today we are going to see the equality of two complex numbers. So, when can we say that two complex numbers are equal? So, we know that a complex number is of the form uh, a plus ib. So, there could be a second complex number c plus id. So when can we say that these two complex numbers are equal? So that's what we are going to see now. So for two complex numbers to be equal, their real and imaginary parts should be equal. So the real part of this complex number is A, and the real part of the second complex number is C. So they should be equal. Similarly, imaginary parts of the two complex numbers should be equal. So B should be equal to D. So if that's the case, then we can say that two complex numbers are equal. So for example, if one complex number is 3 plus 4i and the other complex number is 3 minus 4i, then these two complex numbers are not equal because the real parts are equal. So real part of the first complex number is 3. Real part of the second complex number is also 3. So real part is fine, but imaginary parts are not equal. So imaginary part of the first complex number is 4, whereas imaginary part of the second complex number is negative 4. So they are not equal, and so the two complex numbers are not equal. So hope that idea is clear. So we can now move on and look at some different type of question, right? So let's say we have a complex number 3 plus 4i, and if I say that this complex number is equal to another complex number x plus 4i, then if you are asked to solve for x, which means we are asked to find the value of x that makes this equation true. So the equation true ആവണമെങ്കിൽ for 3 plus 4i to be equal to x plus 4i, what should be the value of x? Not a question. So so we know that for two complex numbers to be equal, their real and imaginary parts should be equal. So here the imaginary parts are already equal. So now what is left is the real part. So real part of the first complex number is 3, and that should be equal to the real part of the second complex number x. So which means this x should be equal to 3. So that's the solution for that question. Similarly, we can look at another example. So let's say we have a complex number 4 minus 7i. If I say is equal to 4 plus x, then we are asked to solve for x. Okay. So in this case, the real parts are already equal. Both complex numbers have the real part as 4. So we what is left to check is if the imaginary parts are also, now the imaginary parts should be equal and the complex numbers in the imaginary part are equal icon. So here the imaginary part of this complex number, right? That is negative 7. It's not plus 7, it is minus 7. So we have to be careful about that. Whenever there is a negative sign uh, for the real part or the imaginary part of a complex number, that sign belongs to the real part or the imaginary. Chale, if we have like minus 4 plus 7, I know. അല്ലെങ്കിൽ if we have 4 minus 7, I. So standard form of the complex number, there is no negative sign. So whenever there is a negative sign in a complex number, that belongs to the real part or the imaginary part, right? So here we have negative 70, which is this negative sign belongs to the imaginary part. So imaginary part of the first complex number is negative 7, which should be equal to the imaginary part of the second complex number. So the second complex number here is the imaginary part of the second complex number is x. So which means x should be equal to negative 7. So അങ്ങനെയാണ് നമ്മൾ ഇങ്ങനെ that's how we solve these type of problems. പിന്നെ I can use the same example and write as 4 minus 7i is equal to 4. If you have something like this, right, then this means that uh, the imaginary part of uh, mm, okay, so here I can say minus 7. So for these two complex numbers to be equal, right? So actually, this should be, I should have written this as xi. So in the end, x 4 plus xi, because x itself cannot imaginary part on the, if I write just x, that's not clear, right? So okay, so here I should have written minus xi. So in this case, for these two complex numbers to be equal, right, what should be x, right? So what's the imaginary part of this first complex number? Imaginary part is negative 7. And what's the imaginary part of the second complex number? That's minus x. Now up and atom negative 7 is equal to negative x normally. That's same as x is equal to 7. So നമുക്ക് ഇവിടെ 7 substitute ചെയ്താൽ you get 4 minus 7i is equal to 4 minus 7i. അപ്പോൾ നെഗറ്റീവ് 7 is equal to നെഗറ്റീവ് 6 എങ്ങനെയാണ് x is equal to 7 ആയെന്ന് പറഞ്ഞാൽ ഒരു ഇക്വേഷൻ്റെ കാര്യത്തിൽ നെഗറ്റീവ് 7 is equal to നെഗറ്റീവ് എക്സ് നമ്മൾ നേരത്തെ പഠിച്ചിട്ടുണ്ട്. If you do anything on the left side, I should do the same thing on the right side. ഇപ്പം ഈ എനിക്ക് വേണ്ടത് എക്സ് ആണ്. സോ ഇവിടെ നെഗറ്റീവ് എക്സ് ആണ് ഉള്ളത്. സോ ഇഫ് ഐ വോണ്ട് ടു നെഗറ്റീവ് എക്സ്, ഇഫ് ഐ വോണ്ട് ടു ഗെറ്റ് റെഡ് ഓഫ് ദ നെഗറ്റീവ് സൈൻ, ഞാൻ ഇവിടെ മൈനസ് 1 കൊണ്ട് മൾട്ടിപ്ലൈ ചെയ്താൽ മതി. അപ്പോൾ വെൻ ഐ ഡു ദാറ്റ് ഓൺ ദി റൈറ്റ് ഹാൻഡ് സൈഡ്, ഐ ഹാവ് ടു ഡു ദ സെയിം തിങ് ഓൺ ദ ലെഫ്റ്റ് ഹാൻഡ് സൈഡ്. സോ മൈനസ് 1 ഇവിടെയും മൾട്ടിപ്ലൈ. സോ മൈനസ് 1 ഇൻറ്റു മൈനസ് 7 7 ആണ്. മൈനസ് എക്സ് ഇൻറ്റു മൈനസ് 1 എക്സ് ആണ്. സോ that's how we solve these type of problems. So in the next video, we can look at the different forms of writing a complex number.